Hello, my name is Pastor Len Smith, interim pastor here at Shepherd's Heart Fellowship in Osceola, Indiana. And today we're going to talk about the Apostle Thomas. If we say the word Thomas, many of us remember sort of a nickname people have given to him called Doubting Thomas. But we have to remember that Thomas was not just a person who doubted the resurrection of Christ, but he was very loyal to Christ. For example, on one occasion, Jesus told his disciples that he intended to go to Judea. And his disciples were really concerned because if Christ went there, he would face a lot of hostility. But Thomas, he had sort of a little melancholy personality. He said in John 11:16, "Let us also go that we may die with him." He thought Jesus was going to die. So I think as modern readers, sometimes we forget about Thomas's courage, and he's remembered more for his weakness and his doubt. And in the upper room, Jesus told his disciples, "Whither I go, you know, and the way you know." And then Thomas, he sort of spoke his mind. He said, "Lord, we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way?" In John 14:5. And of course, after Jesus' resurrection, Thomas told his friends, he sort of challenged them. He said, "Except I shall see in his hands the print of his nails, put my finger in the print of the nails, thrust my hand into his side, I will not believe," recorded in John 20:25. And so a few days later, Jesus did appear to Thomas and the other disciples to give them physical proof that he indeed was alive. And of course, many of us remember in the scriptures from John 20:28 that he had his confession of faith where he said, "My Lord and my God." Early church leaders respected the example of Thomas. The church father Augustine commented, quote, "He doubted that we might not doubt." Now, there's a lot of traditions about what happened to Thomas. Some say he became a missionary to India. It is said that he was martyred there and he was buried in what is now a suburb of Madras in India. And another account, not in our Bible, but there was a book called Acts of Thomas that was written during the 2nd century. And they talk about how each apostle seemed to have a different portion of the world for their ministry. And this book, Acts of Thomas, also said that Thomas was a missionary in India, but apparently he was stubborn at first and he refused to go. But tradition says he saw a vision and he dreamed that he was sold as a slave to an Indian merchant. And accepting this as God's will for his life, he went in obedience to the Lord's command. Now, some people question whether Thomas ever labored in India. I remember years ago when I was teaching world history, when the Portuguese explorers eventually got to India, they were shocked to find there were already Christian people in India, and they had no idea of how those people got there. So some traditions say that Thomas was a missionary in what is today modern Iran. Other sources, of course, carry him farther east. And there are Christians known as Malabar Christians in St. Thomas, India, who still consider him to be their evangelist and martyr. And there are traditions saying that he was shot by a shower of arrows while praying in India. But however or wherever Thomas died, Thomas the Doubter certainly found life worth giving to the cause of Jesus Christ. Thank you for continuing to listen to our series on the apostles. And again, we invite you to attend our life application classes or morning worship here at Shepherd's Heart Fellowship. Life application classes begin at 9 a.m., morning worship at 10. Or if you are not a morning person, if you'd like to join us for our Sunday evening Bible study of Proverbs, that starts at 5 p.m., followed by a prayer meeting at 6 o'clock following the Bible study. Again, thank you for listening to this series, and stay tuned for our final person of the series, the Apostle Paul.